One night I heard the call to prayer as you know, these men praying, and they were in prostration, and in that moment I prayed and I said, God, please let me have that one day. I want to be able to pray like that.
Ini adalah Selin. Dia menemukan Islam saat mendengarkan adzan dan melihat orang-orang yang sedang sholat di masjid, yang membuatnya tersentuh. Selin yang terlahir dari keluarga Kristen, dia dibesarkan di keluarga yang kurang religius yang membuatnya menjadi seorang yang tidak peduli pada agama. Saat remaja, Selin mulai merasa tidak nyaman dengan cara dia berpakaian. Karena selalu menjadi pusat perhatian bagi para laki-laki, dia mulai merubah cara berpakaian dengan yang lebih sopan dan tertutup. Setiap Selin pergi ke gereja, dia tidak merasa terhubung dengan Tuhan. Seperti tidak pernah berbicara langsung dengan Tuhan, melainkan selalu melalui semacam perantara.
So a little bit about myself. I was born in London and was raised here, but my mom is American. All of my family on that side are pretty much Christian, specifically Catholic, Protestant, but not religious too much. And then my dad was born in the UK, but he is of Turkish Cypriot heritage. So on that side of my family, everyone's pretty much Muslim. And then on top of all of that, I grew up just with my mom. My dad had moved to the Middle East when I was a child. So yeah, very secular environment, and I went to a mixed school in London. At the age of like 15, 16, I started becoming a little bit more popular at school, and that's when my lifestyle changed quite a bit. I started dressing differently. I always just felt that it was something that you had to put up with, people making comments, or specifically men making comments every time you'd go out. And as a young girl, it was just so horrible. I remember having my skin crawl every single time a man would whistle or make a comment. But looking back, the clothes that I was wearing, first of all, made me look a lot older, but secondly, they were so provocative that you are giving out this image that you almost want to be sexualized. I used to go to church a little bit when I was young with my grandfather, who's English, step-grandfather. I just struggled quite a lot with the teachings and being at church. I just felt like I was always so impatient. I could never sit and listen, and nothing connected with me whatsoever. I felt that the services to me were like a very indirect relationship with God, and I couldn't quite get to God through the way that I was taught to practice religion. And then I also had issues with particular concepts like the concept of the Trinity, the role of Jesus, but also I always felt that there was a sense of indirectness in how I was engaging with my religion. I felt like I was never really speaking to God directly. It was always through some kind of intermediary. And even in prayer, I felt that it was always so formal, and I was never able to really feel much.
Saat Selin melanjutkan kuliah S2, dia banyak mengambil mata kuliah tentang Islam, seperti sejarah Islam, politik Islam. Saat dia mempelajari teologi dan keadilan sosial dalam Islam, dia sangat terkejut dengan apa yang dia baca. Dia berpikir bahwa Islam adalah agama yang masuk akal baginya.
And then I studied international history. And for some reason, I had taken a lot of courses again on like Islamic history. And then one particular course that I took was called Political Islam. So it was about the roots of Islamic extremism. And one of the things that we covered was the rise of ISIS, which was something that, again, I'd always get very riled up about. And one of the essays we had to write was about whether ISIS could be considered an Islamic state or not. And of course my own stance from the outset was, yeah, of course it's an Islamic state. We can't sugarcoat it. You know, we can't sugarcoat what Sharia law is. We can't sugarcoat what all of these things are. The brutality, the killings, that is what an Islamic state is. So as I was researching my essay, and that was a lot more pure theology, and I started catching myself off guard a little bit. I was getting more and more surprised by what I was reading. One of the things that I focused on was social justice in Islam. And I remember thinking, oh, you know, that's actually quite impressive what an Islamic state envisions. And I suddenly started thinking, okay, like Islam as a religion, it is really making sense to me. I'm understanding it a lot better. And I can almost now understand why people convert to this religion, but it just felt like something I would never do myself. Like, it was great for other people, but it wasn't something I wanted as part of my life.
Saat libur kuliah, Selin pergi ke Siprus tempat ayahnya. Di sana dia melihat rumah ayahnya berhadapan dengan masjid. Saat adzan dia naik ke balkon rumahnya untuk melihat-lihat saja. Namun kemudian dia melihat orang-orang mulai sholat, dia sangat tersentuh dan dia menangis karena melihat keimanan yang dimiliki oleh orang-orang itu. Bahkan Selin pun berdoa kepada Tuhan. Tuhan, tolong izinkan saya memiliki itu, suatu hari nanti saya ingin berdoa seperti itu.
But one of the trips that I took to Cyprus, I used to go to Cyprus quite a lot, like every year, and see my dad there. And we have this small house in the village that's right overlooking a mosque. My grandfather actually used to teach at that mosque. From the balcony of our house, you can see, when the doors are open, the very few people who go there to pray, but you can see them praying. One night I heard the call to prayer, as I always did when I was there. I just thought, let me go up on the balcony and see what's happening. This is probably what changed everything for me. As I was on the balcony, I saw these men praying, and they were in prostration, and I at that point wasn't really like a strong believer, I'd say, in any way. I kind of talked to God sometimes here and there. In that moment, I prayed and I said, God, please let me have that one day. I want to be able to pray like that. And I was crying. It just seemed like this thing in front of me, these people praying, was so unachievable for me. It was something that was so far removed that it just felt impossible, like it was a completely different life that I'd never have, but I so wanted to be a part of and to experience.
Setelah momen itu, Selin mulai mempelajari Islam, dia mulai menonton video teologi Islam, ceramah Islam dan lain-lainnya. Selin mulai memantapkan hatinya untuk masuk Islam, namun dia takut kalau keluarganya akan membencinya. Selin juga tahu bahwa hal ini sangat penting baginya.
After that moment, I realized that religion was starting to weigh a lot more heavily on me. All the videos I was watching were to do with Islamic theology and like debates and speakers' corner and stuff, and people's stories to conversion. And so I decided, okay, maybe this is something that I want for myself. Maybe I do want to be Muslim, but how is this going to happen? How is my family going to really accept this? Not just being Muslim, but being practicing. Am I going to start to have to wear a headscarf? How is my life going to change? And I felt really afraid of that. And I spoke to a few people at the time who I trusted, and it was clear that this was something that was important for me to do. So I took my Shahada one night. I think it was actually on Christmas Eve, or like a night before Christmas Eve. And it was such a special, intimate moment. I was so emotional, and it just felt like the best feeling to know that this is exactly where I was supposed to be. This was exactly what was planned for me. And that everything that I'd been through up to that point had led me exactly to this, to becoming Muslim.
Setelah masuk Islam, Selin tidak memberitahu orang tuanya dan teman-temannya. Dia merahasiakannya sendiri. Selin fokus belajar cara sholat dan bacaannya. Dia mencoba menerapkannya setiap hari.
And I still get emotional thinking about it now, because there were so many signs in my whole childhood that led me up to that point. So after I took my Shahada, I decided that I wouldn't tell anyone, straight away at least. I wanted just to be really gradual in how I was going to go about changing things. I just wanted to figure out what I'd start with first. It seemed so overwhelming. I was living with my mum and my brother at the time, and I thought I'd just keep it a little bit quiet and not tell any of my friends. I told a few of my Muslim friends, but that was it. One of the things that I knew I wanted to really focus on was prayer. At that point I could read and write in Arabic, but I couldn't really understand loads. But I thought prayer is the main entryway into this, so that's what I wanted to focus on. That was actually a really, really difficult challenge, because even though I was able to recite the prayers and learn them quite quickly because I could read and write in Arabic, I just couldn't connect with God, I felt, anymore. Everything suddenly changed, and whereas before I was having these really personal like intimate conversations with God, just, you know, in my head, nothing crazy. I suddenly felt that because there was something so formal now with very specific ways you have to pray and the particular movements and the particular words, I lost all that connection. So that was quite a difficult time. I was so focused on the words and the actions and movements that it kind of stripped the spiritual aspect from the prayers. And thankfully I ended up regaining that later down the line, but it did take a while for that to happen.
Selin ingin memberitahu orang tuanya, namun dia takut akan reaksi orang tuanya. Dia kemudian memberitahu dengan cara mengirim surat kepada orang tuanya. Saat orang tuanya terkejut menerima surat dari Selin, dia khawatir anaknya dalam masalah. Namun setelah membaca surat itu, orang tuanya mendukung keputusan Selin dan begitu juga dengan ayahnya.
Finally, I decided to tell my mum and my brother. I was so nervous. I actually wrote a letter to my mum to explain to her that I had become Muslim, and she was really concerned when I said I had a letter to show her. But when she actually read it, she was really, really supportive, and I'm so grateful to have had a mum, or to have a mum who accepted me in such a supportive way. My brother was the same. I think they were both a little bit nervous again because at the time there was a lot of stuff on the news about people converting and then going off to ISIS, to Syria and Iraq and stuff. So there was that concern, but because they knew my temperament, I don't think it was a massive worry. It was interesting because even though I was nervous to tell my mum and my brother, I wasn't so nervous, which is ironic considering like my mum specifically is not from a Muslim background, she's Christian. My modesty journey has also been quite a long one. I started dressing modestly even before I became Muslim, kind of like during my master's degree. I just decided I wanted to cover my body. I was sick of people objectifying me and sexualizing me, so I started wearing very loose clothing, but my hair was always on show. It was really difficult when I finally did decide to cover my hair, so I'm not sure what would be like most helpful to people. But yeah, I just have to say that it's insane to think what my life would be like now without Islam, and I can never forget about what a privilege and blessing it has been to be given this opportunity in my life. And even though there's still a lot of things that I want to implement into my lifestyle and do better at, it's just been the best thing that could ever happen to me.